Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Indies for June 27th, 2021. Holy crap, we're halfway through the year already. Oh, my gosh. All right, well, welcome to the show. We've got a great show for you. We're going to do some talk about some hybrid authoring, and we have a great indie connection. And right now, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of something coming here later today, as we'll be debuting our next episode of Genres. It's the alternate history, and hopefully this little clip will give you a sense of how interesting and fascinating this conversation really was. So enjoy that, and then we'll be back with the roundtable right after that.
When it comes to history, we seem to think we have a stark understanding of the truth. But the truth is, history is told by the ones who write it. As storytellers, we have a natural and curious inclination to ask what if. Like, what if a woman was the first human to step foot on the moon? What if the deadliest creatures in the sea were the pirates, and the creatures themselves were actually the good guys? That's a little of what alternative history provides. And these storytellers...
Hi, I'm Nikki Nelson-Hicks, and I write a lot of weird fiction. I like to dabble in a lot of different genres. I think today we're going to be talking about alternative history, and I'll be probably bringing up my story, The Galvanized Girl. And that's really what all you really need to know for right now.
Hi, I'm Anita Stewart. I write under A.F. Stewart. I write horror, fantasy, steampunk, and most of my stories are set in history of some sort with weird stuff. Things changed, strange situations, and monsters. So, yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Claire Smith, and I write science fiction, I write fantasy, I write horror. I have a game out, T-Rex Time Machine, and I've been known to write some alternate history, including a story that's going to be coming out in the July and August issue of Analog Magazine. This is the periodically, but this is the May-June one. The July-August one will have my story, The Next Frontier.
Hi, I'm Jen Thompson, and for those of you who haven't heard of me, I run the beautiful IABE, otherwise known as Indie Author Book Expo. We focus on uniting readers, writers, and authors to build better books, and I think I'm here more on the publishing side of things, as far as publishing fiction and just kind of going into what history has to do with fiction.
Hi, my name is Madeleine Holly-Rosing. I am the writer-creator of the steampunk, supernatural, prose, and graphic novel series, Boston Metaphysical Society.
These writers are here to tell you the why and how the course of history is due for a rewrite. In this episode of Genres, Alternative History.
All women signed up for this panel, and it was just a neat observation. I'm cool with that. I'm all for it. And there was a brief explanation. Nikki, you want to tell everybody why you think that came to fruition?
Because I think women want to change history more than men. I mean, especially the way we've been treated in history. We're probably the ones who want to change history far more than men would.
I would agree with that, definitely.
The story that I wrote that's coming out in Analog is my attempt to change history and to add women to it, specifically to add women to the space program in the 1960s.
As astronauts? Because we had women working in the back. But as astronauts.
Yes. Yes, as astronauts. The Soviet Union had a number of cosmonauts, over 10, maybe even a dozen. They had plans, though it didn't go very far, at one point to have an all-women crew of 4 or so. They had plans to have a woman walk on the moon. As some of our viewers probably know, they had the first woman, Valentina Tereshkova, who went into space in 1963. So there were a lot of firsts. But in the United States, there were no women in the official program, although there was what was known as the Mercury 13, which was a number of women who had been in aviation. and were going through some of the same training as the male astronauts. But it did not get very far.
So you're writing from the perspective of that it did get far.
What I decided to do was, this is the alternate history part of it, is to say, well, what if a cosmonaut had an opportunity to defect to the United States? And I looked at the Paris air shows as a potential opportunity for that, because the cosmonauts and American astronauts did actually get together at a couple of the Paris air shows. So I kind of had an opportunity, and then I thought, well, what if the cosmonaut who defected was a woman? And how would NASA react to that? And what would be the political dynamic in the United States? And so that was my starting point. It wasn't the traditional, what if the war had gone differently? What if the military genius had died in infancy? And any of that kind of stuff. It was I had a different area of history that I really wanted to change.
All right. So, yeah, that's going to be later today. We'll have that premiere for you. And right now we're premiering live and in person the Round Table. And I'm real excited to have, as always, a wonderful, wonderful group of people here to talk about hybrid authoring. I sent an article out. It was kind of it was just kind of touching on hybrid authoring, but nonetheless, I thought it was an interesting topic to discuss, and we will do just that right now. But before we do, as always, we'd love to hear who's here and why they're, who they are. And so we'll just go down the line here. So I'm going to start with you, Megan. So go ahead, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
I am Megan Morgan. I am the author of the YA sci-fi fantasy series, beginning with The Altered Wake and The Altered Rise, which should be coming out later this year. And my daughter made a comment yesterday about unicorns, which is causing me to explore ideas in that area. But then how do you get the ideas to stop is the problem. Right. Not enough time for all of it. It would be dark, scary unicorns. So that sounds but yeah, I'm a writer, and yeah, I can't wait to dig into today's topic. It's very interesting, and it's an area I've thought about a lot over the years.
Awesome. All right, Madeleine.
Hi guys, I'm Madilynn Dale, based out of Oklahoma. I'm an author, and I am, as of recently, both a traditional and indie published author. So this is going to be a great topic today. My main focus is fantasy, romance, sci-fi, paranormal genre. And I have a series out called The Fae Shifters, and it's a fantasy romance series.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. All right. Mr. Lahr?
Hello, I'm Ron Lahr. I write mostly humorous stuff. I have a book coming out in about a month. You're as Stupid as You Are Fat, How to Talk to Women. I have a sci-fi humorous novel coming out later, You Get What You Steal. And then I have an epic fantasy trilogy, the Cathaldi Chronicles, with a sarcastic, rude hero, quote unquote. And I'm a Scorpio, and I like walks on the beach.
Well, welcome. I appreciate that. All right. Bobby?
Hi, I'm Bobby Nash. I'm an author. I write novels, comic books, short stories, various things like that. I write a lot of crime fiction, a lot of action adventure stuff, pulpy stuff. But I also do a lot of work for various publishers in various genres.
Awesome. Welcome. It's nice to have you here. All right, Mr. Johnson?
Hello, I'm Adam. I'm also a Scorpio. I And I write, fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal, that kind of stuff. I also do a lot of work in like personal development and coaching and things like that, because all creatives need that outlet to, stay creative. And a lot of times we get burnt out if we don't take care of ourselves. So I think that's very important.
Awesome. Welcome, sir. Megan, JD has the title of your book for you.
I love it.
All right. Being a hybrid author is probably more and more common these days than it isn't. And, I just want to start by asking everybody, what they've considered, what they've looked at in terms of their own work. Have they looked at, being traditionally published versus indie published? What criteria? How would you classify what work you would go after? What for? Is there certain things that you would write that you feel like you're going to write that you want to put out in traditional fashion, or are there certain things that you just know I'm going to always be indie for? I'm curious where you all stand in terms of thinking about the hybrid model and what you use as criteria to determine which direction you're going to go.
I know that as a baby writer, like probably about a decade ago, as I was really finishing up work on my first novel, and I started going through the query process, and I started to learn more about, the traditional publishing industry, what I discovered was that it wasn't what I had hoped it would be. I found that, a lot of the traditional publishers really don't put a lot of money behind marketing their authors. Like, the process is very lengthy. Like, even once you get accepted by a publisher, you're looking at maybe a year, sometimes 2 before publication. And that's after you've gone through the query process, both for an agent and then with, the publishing companies. And even then, you could spend 5 or 6 years with your book on a shelf and, nothing comes of it because there's no way to describe it. Like, this happens to a lot of books. Like, if they don't fit neatly within a genre or they can't be easily described, then, just no one is going to pick them up because it's hard to know how to market that. It's hard to know where the audience is. So I think that this you started to see as, as online publishing became more and more viable, as, Amazon and other places became a little bit more accessible. You saw a lot of authors who were already well established transition into additionally offering some of their books on a more independent level as well. They once they had an audience, they just shifted over into, communicating directly with that audience. So, I think that was ultimately part of the reason why I ended up going primarily indie in my publishing, was because of the length of time that it takes to get a book to market. And then also, just that you're not going to get marketing support unless you're like one of the big names. And that's how you get your book out there. So my concept was, well, if the publishing company isn't going to help me with that part of it, which to me feels like the trickiest part, I would much rather just take ownership and do that myself. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that more traditionally published authors are going for more of a hybrid model, because you get sort of that publishing house support, you get their stamp of approval, which is the biggest thing. Like, this is a high quality product because it made it through all these various gateways. But then once you're out there and you have that name behind you, okay, well, why not publish independently? There's no reason not to at that juncture.
I'd say also distribution is probably the biggest thing that traditional publishing has to offer that's different than the indies. Their books are more widely available, so that helps with sales. But there's still a lot of marketing that has to be done. You still have to get out there and push the book, and try to sell the book, and that's going to happen no matter what size publisher you're with.
And for Bobby, you're probably the model here. For the hybrid model, you do a lot of things where you have traditional publishers that you work with, and you also do indie publishing on a lot of your stuff as well. So what is your criteria? What do you determine for how you go about doing either one of those?
Right. Well, because I do stuff with media tie-in work and stuff where I work for publishers that either have licensed characters or company-owned characters. They will contact me whenever they have projects that come up that they think I'd be a good fit for, and it's like, hey, we're doing like I just finished up a Kolchak the Night Stalker story that was like, we need you interested in writing this? Great, we'll pay you X amount, and I'm like, great, that pays 2 bills, and so I work that into my schedule. So I do a lot of stuff like that where I can work for them. You write the story, you turn it in, you do editing, and then you do promotion when it comes out. But unlike the stuff I do on my own, I don't have to do the production work or any of that stuff. And so it's nice, and it does reach other audiences. Plus, it's fun to play with characters that you don't own, and I do enjoy doing that. So, because every once in a while, as cool as I think my characters are, it is cool every once in a while to write the Green Hornet or one of those guys. So.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. How about for everybody else? What has been your determining factor?
So I've done, excuse me, my short stories I've done with like a publishing company through anthologies and stuff. My novels, I don't know if I want to sit and wait through the query process again, like I did before, just because it is so difficult to get somebody to want to take your story. So, yeah.
I'm too old to do that. I would fear I'd be dead before I'd get anything published. But I will say, I have nothing against the traditional model. And when an audiobook publisher approached me and said, hey, we want to do an audiobook, I said, great. I mean, nothing is more attractive than people wanting you. So if a traditional publisher came and wanted to publish my stuff, I would be very open to discussing it, but I don't seek it at all. I don't have the time. And I do have a friend who is an international best-selling author, and he made a bunch of money, but he has no audience, no connection to the audience that he owns. So the segment that he wrote in has shrunk, and he has no way to directly reach those people. And he would have made a lot more money if he had done it indie and kept that. He regrets it, but at the time he did it, it didn't exist. So.
How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off in the fact that I think that like indie publishing is probably the best way to go regardless right now, especially if you're just starting out. I mean, if you're one of the big names already, then you're already locked in, you're already making your money, you already have your audience, it is what it is. But right now, I mean, if you're just starting out or if you're a small name, indie is definitely the best way to go at the moment, because I mean, like Megan said, you have to market your own book yourself. You have to put everything out there yourself. You're still doing all the legwork anyways. So, I mean, for an indie publisher to give you, 4% to 10% royalties of your book when you're doing all the work for it, and you have to go through that long waiting period and, your queries, and you have to get an agent and all that, like, it's really, really tough. So if you're starting out right now, the best thing to do is to publish indie, build your own audience, build your own community around your books and the things that you write. And then, like, if you get approached by a large company or a traditional publisher and they want to put something out with you and they want to give you a contract, then you can entertain it and say, you know, is this going to be right for me? Am I going to be able to get a good return on my work? You know, but other than that, I mean, you're getting 70% margins for the most part when you publish through KDP. So if you're able to do the marketing yourself, which you pretty much have to anyways, just starting out, you know, it's the best thing to do to get in there and start pushing it. But yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go, is if you build your own audience and then you are approached by a traditional, that's much better than trying to chase the traditional.
I will say that, like, my experience, I was very fortunate in what sort of like happened in that when I was going to publish my book completely independently, I sent it, you know, to have it edited and formatted correctly for, you know, all of the online, all of the like e-readers and things like that, which if you're going to publish independently, either learn how to properly format your books for e-readers or get someone who knows what to do. And in that process, the person who was formatting my book also happened to have their own, you know, small indie publishing company. And basically he read my work and he was like, hey, you know, if you would like, then I would be happy to publish this, you know, through my company. And so he kind of takes care of the more technical side of things, like uploading it to Amazon and all of those other kind of techie things that, like, I don't really like to do that much anyway. So yeah, I happened to land in a position purely through luck and through part of the process where, like, I have someone who, you know, kind of takes care of those things. And then, you know, I kind of get to do the portions of it that I don't mind doing, like the marketing and you know, and the actual writing of the stuff. So yeah, I mean, like, my experience was very fortunate, but also, like, if you publish independently, if you put yourself out there, you're much more likely to start making those kinds of connections than if you are sitting on your book for 4 years waiting. It's entirely dependent on your goals, but I think that, like, a lot of people would be surprised if you're writing high quality work and you put yourself out there and you start making those connections, then, you know, they're much more likely to happen.
Mm. I think you make a good point too. The indie is not just doing it yourself. There
Yes.
are small indie publishers out there that you can still submit your work to that can handle those things. So
you do
you're
have
right.
to be careful because there are lots of scammers out there also.
Absolutely.
So, like,
Absolutely.
I was able to meet my publisher, like, in person at a party basically. And he was like, oh yeah, I do that formatting stuff. Like, right at the time that I was, like, working on publishing, I met him face to face. He was working on doing the formatting for e-readers and Kindle and things. And he was like, hey, I can also do this. So it was very fortunate. And I was able to find someone who was, like, near me, and also someone who, like, I'd met him face to face. I knew he was real. I knew I wasn't getting scammed.
Right.
Nice. And JD makes a good point about what you guys are talking about a little bit too, and that's the important thing to remember: research anywhere you're going to publish. It's not everywhere is also not a good fit or a smart move. Sometimes nightmare stories abound. You know,
I mean, a lot of writers are desperate to get their work out there, so there are a lot of people who are taking advantage of that and who are either selling things that you don't need as an independent writer, or who are just straight up going to steal your work. So
yeah,
be careful.
absolutely.
But
But you-
there are also a lot of opportunities.
But Adam, you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it too, Megan, and I think pretty much everybody mentioned it a little bit. It's interesting. Like, when I started, it was, you know, you query, you go to conferences, you meet agents, you try to get an agent, you try to get published and all that. And now it's more of because of, you know, the Stephanie Meyers of the world and the Andy Weirs and those folks. You put something out there, it's kind of, they've kind of embraced the filmmaking trope too, which is like, you know, you make a short film to get people interested in you, and then you get offers to make a feature out of it. And it's kind of the same aspect. You put out an indie book and you get, you know, interest from publishers if you blow up as an indie, and then, you know, that's more of the model that we're seeing. But we're also seeing the reverse in that respect too, and this article touches on that, which is that a lot of traditionally published authors who've been ignored or have a large catalog a backlog where the publisher just doesn't have time to promote those anymore. They get back those rights and they go indie with those things as well, which is kind of an interesting new twist on it a little bit. And and I've heard, and I know of a couple traditional authors who are indie in the ebook marketplace because big publishers suck at marketing ebooks and they don't want to do it. They just hate it. So they've negotiated where they've kept their rights as ebooks, so that they could market it and put that out themselves, so that's also something that's been going on a lot too. I mean, it's interesting too, because this article mentions about something that you touched on, Ron, which was building a database, right? And building a foundation and building an audience. And I'm curious if that was also something you guys thought about when you were weighing what your decision was to where you're going to go. Do you feel like because the indie marketplace is a lot more like you said, face to face, a lot more, you're going to touch your audience, you're going to be close to them, I mean, hopefully not too close, but you're going to have interaction with them. Was that something that appealed to you all in this space too? Or was that just something that you knew was going to happen, or you weren't really even thinking about that when you were trying to publish it?
For me, it was definitely a big deal. And so, for example, right now we're moving, my wife and I are moving because my mother has Alzheimer's. My dad needs help taking care of her. And so we're going to provide that. And so in my newsletter, I've been talking about selling, putting the house up and moving. And multiple people have written in about their stories of, their parents. And that connection, we're emailing back and forth. These aren't public discussions, but that connection directly to those readers, even though it has nothing to do with the type of writing I do, I definitely feel like we have established a personal connection, and I want that.
I love that you touched on that, Ron, and that's actually huge for your newsletter, for building community, anything like that. Just because you're putting out, a certain type of work, like, you're a fantasy author, you're this type of author, whatever you are, doesn't mean that you shouldn't actually share parts of who you are and the struggles that you've went through, the things that you've done to get yourself there, things that are going on in your personal life. That creates a real connection with your reader base and your newsletter and anyone else who's following you, and people crave that real connection. So if you're able to create that real connection through your newsletter, then you're going to have like a much better click rate on your newsletter. You're going to have much better reactions with everything, and you're probably going to end up selling more when you do actually put an offer out there. A big part of the newsletter is just creating value for your reader. It's not just sell. You should not be like selling something every time you send your newsletter out, because then you're just going to turn off most of your audience, and a lot of them will probably unsubscribe or just not read it. But if you're providing huge value and creating connections when you send out your newsletter, then you're going to be to a space where you're able to actually sell to them once you're ready.
How about for you, Adam? Do you crave that connection too, or is that something you were thinking about, that you would like that opportunity to have that connection?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, I've always been kind of a weird person, like kind of like very introverted, but also very extroverted at the same time. Like, I love people, I love interacting, but I also love being at home and not going out and doing anything. I think that's kind of common with a lot of writers. They like to stay at home and just hang out. A lot of them are pretty extroverted, but I like to be at home, but I also really love that connection. And I actually deeply believe that human connection is a need for everybody. You need to have some sort of connection. So absolutely, I love being able to connect with an audience and, provide myself. And I've actually been working a lot more on being more vulnerable and opening myself up to who I really am to everybody, because for a long time it was an issue for me. Like, I wanted to put on this mask, like, oh, I'm this person that you should like and follow, and everything like that. But none of that really matters. The most thing that matters is you're being authentic, you're being yourself, putting yourself out there, and those are things I've struggled with. So I'm working on that quite a bit. And when you are a little more authentic, you do create better connections with your community.
Thanks.
Yeah, I started out writing comics before I got into writing novels and stuff. So I would do the local comic conventions. I would set up get a table. I would set up and do sketches or whatever. So from early in my career, I got used to having this one-on-one interaction with people coming up to the table, to the point I still do that. I do a lot of conventions, a lot of signing events and various things, because I find that in my case, one of the best promotional things I can do is face-to-face talking to people. I think I move most of my books that way, because we have this one-on-one discussion, and I think a lot of that, it's not always, as Adam said, I'm not actively selling them.
Yeah.
It's come in, check out the books, let's talk. And then, sometimes we don't even talk about the books. We can talk about other things. You got a cool shirt. You're a fan of this. I'm a fan of that too. And we talk, there's a lot of different things that interaction, where you've built up people who are, they email you, or they message you through social media. There are people that are following what you do, and they're excited about what you do, or they have questions about what you do. And that's wonderful. I love that stuff.
You'll get a kick out of this. Maybe, Bobby, you might think I might be bordering on stalker territory here, but I on my show on Friday night, I did a rant about conventions coming back, and how I've been told by a lot of people who've attended conventions that there's a lot of people, because of the fact that there's a lot of people making a lot of money right now, and conventions have been doing really well, and people have sold out, that there's a lot more people being lazy about it and sitting around and not engaging their audience, because it's just money coming in. They don't feel like they have to put in the effort right now. And so, I was telling people, get off their lazy ass. And I cited you as an example of somebody who I think does it perfectly. I had a conversation with you at Dragon Con. That's where I met you. Mm-hmm. And myself and JD came up to your table, and we talked for like a half hour, 45 minutes. And I don't think we ever really talked about your books or anything. We just talked about all kinds of stuff, different stuff. And now here you are on my show, because we made that connection. And it's just like, that's so right on. And I just wanted to say that I mentioned you on Friday.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is. There's a wonderful thing about making those connections. I've made, from doing events all these years, I've made a lot of long-term, lifelong friends that I have met at these events, and get to know them. There are people I see once a year at Dragon Con, for example. That's the only place I ever see them. But it's like a family reunion once a year. I know I'm going to run into this handful of people, and it's people we've met because they've come up to my table at one time, and we talked and we clicked.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. I agree with Bobby completely. Like, I can't tell you like how many more sales I make when I am on the ground in person meeting people. And because I write like sci-fi and it's a lot of girls with swords, I tend to, like, number one, I meet amazing people at like free comic book days and things like that, and cons and stuff like that. It's 100% like everyone who walks in is pretty much in the audience that like I am writing for. They're like nerdy people who are 100% into what it is that I'm doing. And so I know that they're going to be there. And then, you're meeting other artists who are doing the same kind of work that you're doing, and making friendships and building those connections. And you're also able to actually interact with people. And they're like 100. I don't know what the percentages are, but they're so much more likely to actually buy the thing when they're able to meet you, see you in person. And I can't tell you how many people have come up at like a Comic-Con kind of thing, and they asked very specific questions about the book that led them to either buy it or like not buy it. And this is something that could never have happened on Amazon or online. Like I had a woman who came up once because she had certain phobias, and she was able to ask, you know, like, is this in it? Is that in it? Does it have this? Does it have that? And I was able to say, like, no, it doesn't have any of that stuff in it. And so she felt comfortable then being able to buy it and read it without, like, you know, running into something that would be really upsetting to her. And those are the kinds of things that, like, are just so much more difficult to do online. And yeah, I think it makes a big difference, both in, you know, ultimately like what your body of work is and who you are as an artist. And of course, these are all things that you can do as a traditionally published author. But I feel like when you're an indie author, you are a lot more likely, because you know that these things are on your plate. I think you're a lot more likely to go do it. I am anyway, because I know that that's on my plate. I know that I have to take ownership of those things. So I'm much more engaged in that process.
You know, there's one other component of it for me. I mean, I don't know if I'm a control freak, but I love to do everything myself. So my wife and I, we grow our own food, and then we make everything from scratch. You know, I make my own crackers, 2 kinds. And I enjoy that. When I'm working on cars, I don't want to pay somebody else to do anything. And that aspect of it, learning all the things that you have to learn to be an indie author, has been very fulfilling. And I would miss that, you know, not being able to do the marketing or be involved in the cover design, you know, whatever it is, all the things that the traditional people take care of it for you. Now, on the other hand, with the audiobook, it was awesome to have people who knew what they were doing and learn from them. But also, I want to make my own audiobooks. So I may just be insane.
Welcome to the club. I do think too, there is a thing with doing the indie stuff or the doing it yourself stuff that you don't get with traditional. You have the ability to experiment more. I think that is, you know, when I started publishing my own stuff, I had the idea of doing novellas instead of novels, which at the time was the publishers weren't really doing that as much. You know, it's I guess I was a little ahead of the curve, because it seems like some of the more publishers are doing that now. But it allowed me to experiment. Instead of doing 1 novel a year with this character, I could do 3 novellas a year. It's the same size, but it allows you to publish 3 books, which is a better promotional opportunity, things like that. So it allows me to experiment, which is a bigger publisher would not probably have that option.
Yeah. You definitely have more creativity and control with your work as an indie instead of just traditional, because like they have control over all of your stuff basically, whereas an indie, you do have it. It's all in your hands.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, Megan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I write from a very specific perspective of that. I was just furiously angry as a small child that all the sci-fi and fantasy books that I read were like male leads, and females were relegated to very specific roles. And so I write like from that place of giving those male roles to women. Like that's what I do as a writer. There are lots of other reasons that I'm writing. Like obviously it's, you know, using words and things is sort of my art, but I have that purpose. And the last thing that I wanted was for that purpose to get stolen from me by a publisher who, you know, wanted something else.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Nice. JD mentioned that he once had a hour and a half conversation with a guy that disagreed with his approach on vampires. Now the guy's a huge supporter, and he said, almost lost my voice in the process, but it was worth it. And he also mentions definitely, Madeleine, a huge part of publishing in this indie is the need to that freedom to show my project exactly how I intended. And,
yes.
It's that is a big factor in things. The interesting thing too about the hybrid model in terms of it going like with a smaller press is that there is also something to the effect of that there's a family feel to it as well, right? And so I'm curious if that's something that you all consider as well. Looking at publishers, do you look at it, saying, if I'm going to go with a publisher, I'm probably going to go smaller because I feel like they're going to have more attention toward me. We're gonna do this. We're gonna kind of feel like we're in this together, kind of idea. Is that something that you all think about as well when you're looking at publishers? If you are looking at publishers,
Yeah, I would say so. My few experiences with larger publishers, I couldn't just call them up or email them and get a response. I couldn't go to one person. Working with some of the smaller indie publishers and mid-sized indie publishers I've worked with, I can shoot an email directly to the publisher or call the publisher, and we'll talk to that person if I need them. And so there is more of a hands-on feel when you're working with some of these indie publishers. Doing the stuff I do myself, I mean, obviously it's me, so I always do my own calls. But there is a little more ease of knowing the people that you work with, whereas with my experiences with the larger publishers, I didn't necessarily know the people that I worked with, or I had no interaction with them.
Yeah, it probably felt a lot more clinical, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was Sullivan. He's my son. He just popped in for a second.
That's awesome.
That was our special guest star.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it wouldn't be a live stream without somebody, or either a cat or a person coming through the screen, right? So
I love that his first thought was to hide behind the curtain. So you may want to get him into counseling so he doesn't become like a serial killer.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Now we're off track a little bit. I'm a little.
Relationships are very important. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
anybody else?
also,
Go ahead.
you see a lot of these writers, they're very specifically buying back these very large bodies of work. And a lot of what makes an independent writer successful is having a large catalog of high quality work. If you have that large catalog and your publisher is just not putting it out there anymore, then it makes all the sense in the world to switch over and go indie, because that is a lot of how people find you, make connections, and how you make a larger volume of sales, is having that big body of work. And so, yeah, I think that that's a huge reason why you're seeing people who have, a lot of books that have been published, they want them back now, and they want to be able to put them out there themselves, and make those personal connections with people.
Matt, I'm sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
I was going to say, no, she's absolutely right, because you're still, doing it indie. I'm still promoting novels that came out over a decade ago because they're still on sale. Whereas, my first novel was with a traditional publisher for a period of time and then went out of print. So if I hadn't re-released it, that book would have just been gone. So now, all these years later, I can still promote and sell that book.
Nice. And Madeleine, you mentioned about you go traditional with short stories and anthologies, and those often only have like a year cycle, or they give back the rights after that. And I'm curious if you recycle those stories, or if you bring those back into the forefront. Have you thought about collecting them and putting them out there, kind of thing, or what do you do with the stories once they've gone out of print?
Well, I will probably definitely make a collection of it if because this is my first time getting one published in an anthology this past month, and I just was kind of like, okay, they took it, but if it does go to print, I think they did let me keep the rights to it, so I can put it in a booklet.
Yeah, I think that's a standard thing with anthologies. Really, is after a year or so, they usually revert the rights back to you. And have you done that, Bobby? Have you put out a collection?
Yeah. I've done. Actually, I was going to put one out myself, and then John Hartness actually cornered me at a convention
Nice.
one time, and he goes, and I'm gonna cuss here, so apologies to anyone that doesn't like that. His
The
pitch to
child is
me
out of
was,
the room, so you're good.
his pitch to me was, because he was just starting he was just starting to publish other people besides himself, and his pitch was, "You got any shit laying around I can publish?" And I was like, "Well, hey, I've been putting together this collection idea," and he's like, "Great, we'll take it." And so it was great. I was able to have them them put it together and do the cover and the packaging. So yeah, so that's fun. But I am in the process now. I've done so much of those pulp characters over the years for those anthologies. I'm going to be putting collections together of those pulp stories. I just haven't done it yet.
Nice. And Bobby also demonstrated what it's like to have good relationships too. That's a good relationship. So that's important as well. All right. Well, something else that's very important is that we do every week is the Indie Connection, and we've got a really good one for you. If you're a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think you're going to really enjoy this, because this Indie Connection really does slay.
Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bring you another Indie Connection, and today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Slayer by Kiersten White, or of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which this is based on. We have already done an Indie Connection on Buffy, but there are so many great vampire books out there that have been inspired by the series, and I thought, while I have Slayer, why not do an Indie Connection on it? So here are some books that you might like if you're into vampires. The first book I have for you is called Grave Things by Lindsay Mead. Viola Danvers is the foul-mouthed exorcist you never hope to meet, because if she's around, you've got problems, hellish problems. Covered in protective tattoos, and with a priest for a stepbrother, she travels the world taking on whatever nasty thing that just crawled out of hell. Most of Viola's customers tend to be financially stunted. Leave it to demons to prey on the poor. But when a wealthy Scotsman asks for her help, suddenly it's more than restless souls sweeping V off her feet. As the new client tries to break down her walls, demons smell sin in the water, and it's his soul they're circling. Can Viola save the Scotsman without losing her heart in the process? The second book I have for you is called Lore and Lust by Carla Nicole. Haruka Harano is alive, but not quite living. Surviving, but not thriving. As an elite, purebred vampire in the 21st century, he is broken, content in his subpar existence. He is done with life, but life is not finished with him. When he receives a formal request to oversee an antiquated vampire ritual at Hertzmonsu Castle, Haruka grudgingly leaves his home to meet another purebred. The vampire is not what he expects. Truly, he is unlike any vampire Haruka has ever encountered. Cautious, innocent, and with the warmth and gravitational pull of the sun. The third book I have for you is called Vampire Hunter by Cassandra Lynn. She's a 2-century-old vampire. He hunts creatures of the dark, like her. No one is supposed to know vampire Azella had loved a vampire hunter 200 years ago, but when a magical stake emerges with the power to eradicate even the oldest vampires, leading her on a quest to infiltrate Hunter Academy and destroy the artifact, she's forced to face the ghosts of her past. The handsome hunter who guards Hunter Academy bears an uncanny resemblance to the love she has never forgotten. Immortals clash with hunters, a raging war on the brink of chaos. Can Azella survive the battles and find love with a man sworn to kill her kind? The fourth book I have for you is called Death Becomes Her by Michael Anderle. What you thought you knew about vampires and werewolves is wrong. So very, very wrong. 1,000 years of effort to keep the unknown world hidden is unraveled, and the patriarch is tired. He needs to find someone to take over. One dying woman might be the ace in the hole he needs. Her name is Bethany Ann. She might also be the one person needed to save humanity. If she is willing to change, will she pass the turning? If she survives the turning, will she be powerful, and how will she handle those who now want her dead? Unknown, untested, and untried, she sets out to accomplish the impossible while forging a new future, one that no one knew was in danger. The universe might forever be changed in her wake. They say a dress can make a woman, but in this case, the dress is death, and death becomes her very well indeed. And the last little bonus we have is one of our Fiction Atlas anthologies called Bloodsport. It is a vampire anthology, and 100% of the proceeds from the anthology go to the International Red Cross. I'm very proud of this anthology, and here is a synopsis. Hungry for some blood-curdling action and adventure? Maybe even a little romance? This clan of talented authors is dying to bring you 11 vampy stories you can really sink your teeth into. One click today for more vampy tales than you can shake a steak at.
Okay, that's all for us this week. We'll see you next week on Indie Connection. Bye.
And I don't think I could say it any better than this. Books that suck in the good way. But yes, that's a great Indie Connection. Go check all those books out, please. And definitely check out everybody here as well. All the links to everybody is in our description right now. So go check them out. I mean, we still got some show left, but, after the show, go do that. And I have to mention, and you can mention this to your son, Megan, when Sullivan appeared on camera, we had the biggest bump of viewers we've had all day. So you can tell him that he's a good luck charm. He's a ratings magnet, and we appreciate it. So
I love that.
So I'm going to throw a hypothetical at you guys to finish off here today. And just to say, if you were looking at a traditional model, you had a traditional contract in place, what are some of the rights or leverages that you would seek in negotiating your contract if you had an opportunity to do so? What would you say are some of the things you absolutely know you would want to keep hold of or have the rights to?
I mean, I think that for any writer, like creative control, certainly for me, would be a big negotiating point for me. Also, ultimately in this discussion, every avenue that's available to you, you should take as long as it feels right. So if you're able to be hybrid and do both indie and, traditional publishing, then go for it, because there are advantages and disadvantages to both, and some work is right for it and some work is not for various avenues. So yeah, you have to be flexible in your approach to things. But for me, definitely creative control is a really big thing, and it's the reason why I ended up going indie, because I wanted to keep that, and the path that I took, I have been able to maintain that.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm a whore, so it would all depend on the money. There's nothing I would demand to keep. In fact, I encourage anyone who wants to pay me to do anything to contact me at my website.
I would say you definitely want to just be careful and make sure you're not just giving away all rights without any negotiation. Because a lot of times they'll do that. It's we just own everything, and you got to make sure, you got to be careful that that you still, as Megan said, there's some control, that you still own this, because some not all publishers are as ethical as other publishers, and some will try to co-opt an ownership. So you have to be careful of that. Make sure you know what you're getting into, and make sure you're happy with it. If you're gonna seethe with resentment at signing this contract, that might be a sign it's not the contract for you.
Absolutely.
JD says Ron wears a suit so that he has more clothes to strip. True story.
I love it.
Adam?
Some of the big things that I would look at is kind of like you were saying, ebook rights would be a huge thing to keep, because again, traditional publishers aren't always that great at marketing them. They might not have the budget to actually market them. So yeah, I would want to keep my ebook rights, but as Ron said, if the price is right, who knows. But then I would also look at things like, a lot of people miss the fact that anything can be put into a contract, literally anything. So you have to read all the fine print, so I would want to keep things like the name of my series, the names of my characters. I would want the rights to those things, because if you sold those things to the company, then they can determine what kind of royalties they give you if anything else ever becomes a fan. Like with J.K. Rowling, there's like a million different Harry Potter things that are sold, and if she didn't keep like the rights to that name and gave it to her publisher, then anything with that name on it, she might not get as large of a cut of it as she should. So I mean, that's just things that I would want to make sure I kept a decent amount of control over, to make sure that I still had ownership of my intellectual property.
Yeah, you see even now, like the Friday the 13th series, is constantly having issues because there are two different properties there. There's the name Friday the 13th, and then there's the character of Jason, and they're owned by two different people. And so making a Friday the 13th movie is now actually incredibly difficult because you have to get both of those properties like at the same time. It's just very interesting. And then look at someone like, George Lucas, who's fought to have the rights to make Star Wars toys. Like, he kept the merchandising rights. The studio kind of didn't care about them because that wasn't a big deal at the time. He fought for them because he saw an opportunity there, and that's where he made an enormous amount of the money that he made.
It makes you wonder, though, how Jason Goes to Space ever got made.
They called it Jason. They didn't call it Friday. They did not call it a Friday the 13th movie. So it did not have the Friday the 13th property on it. It was a Jason movie specifically.
Interesting.
Yeah, they have the same problem like with Buck Rogers. There's two different people that claim ownership of Buck Rogers. There's Doctor Who. A lot of the villains are actually owned by the people that created them, not the company. So, like, every time they do Daleks, they have to pay someone to, like, license the Daleks for the Doctor Who show. So its rights are weird.
JD probably has it more right than anybody here. Cocaine Joe, lots of cocaine. Yeah, probably. He's asking also, do any of you have any contracts to give a legal, or do any of you have any contacts to give a legal look at a contract? Between that and an accountant for indie, seems like there's an opportunity for that. I mean, do we want to give out our lawyers' information here on the show? I mean, but yes, there are entertainment lawyers out there, and they do a good job of vetting contracts. True story. When I was going to be traditionally published, there was an actual clause in the contract that I found that nobody else, they tried to sneak in there, which was, for anybody who doesn't know the story, I was almost traditionally published, and they wanted to take my book and turn it into a TV movie of the week. And one of the things that they put in the contract was I was allowed on set one day, but I would only get the meals that were served to the cast and crew at 50% off. I wouldn't even get it for free. I would have to pay 50% for that. And I caught that. And I go,
$5 or whatever.
But still, I mean, everybody else gets it for free. Why do I have to pay for it? Because
no,
I'm the
but
writer?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. That costs them $5 to give you a free meal. Like, come on.
Yeah. Well, it cost me a lot more than that, but yeah, yeah, it's crazy that something you can't believe what they'll put into these contracts. It's amazing.
Yeah, I had one for a comic book, a graphic novel that the hidden in there was that they would own 51% of it. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, it's like, that means they could just fire me and the artist and bring in their own people to do a sequel. And yeah, that was kind of a deal breaker for us.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you just got to pay attention. You definitely got to read it, right? So, how about for you, Madeleine? Is there something that you would demand?
I would definitely, like, you guys all touched on a lot of things I would demand to keep, like my rights in general. So,
nice.
Yeah,
I think if anybody out there does go traditional, I think the ebook thing is something you really want to look at, because I think that is something that, I mean, because now a lot of these bigger publishers, the big four, have contracts with libraries. They're a little bit more keen on ebooks than they've been in the past, but they won't market them. And they'll mark them up so that they're out of market pretty fast too. So I don't know if you've ever tried to buy a Stephen King ebook, but if it's one of his newer ones, they're usually about $14.99 or $15.99. Which
I've been shocked at like what the cost of books has become the last 2 years or so. It's like really gone insane. Also, like audiobooks are increasingly important, I think, both from an accessibility standpoint and also just from like, I mean, my sister, like the vast majority of books that she reads, she's actually listening to on Audible. So that's a really big deal too. Make sure they don't just take all of that from you. Because
Hey, look, everybody! If you want, Twitch is going to make us famous. We're going to get spam today. All right, cool, awesome. I love that. That's fantastic. All right. Anyway, this was a wonderful discussion. I really appreciate it, everybody. Let's go around the horn and have everybody tell where they can find you, even though it's in the description. But everybody likes to hear it from the person that is actually considers it most important. So, Adam, why don't you start off? Where can everybody come and get you at?
I mean, pretty much on Facebook, Instagram. Instagram is at Adam J. Johnson. Facebook, Adam Johnson author. I have a author page on there, and I also have my personal page on there as well. I'm working on a website right now that will be up hopefully very soon. Other than that, just find me on the socials at Adam Johnson or at the Adam J. Johnson.
You've slowed down on TikTok a little bit, sir. I haven't seen you on there in a while.
Yeah, I know. Life comes at you fast, and
Plus, those things people don't realize how much work those things are, right?
I'm looking at trying to get back into that, but I'm like, there's just so much shit that you could do on any given day. You know what I mean? So you really just got to focus on what sells rather than what everybody tells you should be doing.
Stand up so everybody can see your shirt real quick, because that's fantastic. You need to let the shit go. Yes, awesome. Yes, awesome. All right, Bobby, tell everybody where they can find you, sir.
My website is bobbynash.com. That's kind of the hub for everything. I'm on all the social medias, author Bobby Nash on Facebook, at Bobby Nash on Twitter, Bobby Nash Writes on Instagram. I'm all over the place.
That's awesome. And you're going to be at Dragon Con this year, I assume?
Yes. I am looking forward to it. A year and a half without conventions. It's kind of got me into the, I'm ready for a con.
Yeah, nice. Are you going to be at Multiverse this year?
I don't know. I'm talking with them. We'll see.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Because I might be there, so
I hope to be there. All
right, Mr. Lahr, where can everybody come get you at?
My crappy website, Cathaldi.com. That's where you should go, and then you can find everything else. I just want to say thank you for having me. I dress up because I respect you, Joe, and the other attendees, and I want to thank you all for showing your respect for me by wearing your finest T-shirts. Means a lot.
I'm going to come dressed to the nines one day and surprise you. Watch.
Ooh. Yeah, let's have a tuxedo show.
Yeah. Oh, that's not a bad idea. All right. How about Madeleine? Where can people come and get all your great stuff that's out there?
So all of my links to my social media, you can find them on my website, thechaptergoddess.com. I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I also do a newsletter if you guys want to keep up with me that way. It goes out every week.
And I have to say, you share a lot of my stuff, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for doing that.
No problem.
Online, so everybody can hear that. But yeah, it's awesome. You go get everybody's books. But check it out. Madeleine's covers are fantastic, by the way. So
thank you. I love them. I know. I'm so excited about them.
Nice. All right, Megan. You know what? I'm going to ask you a little bit later, but why don't you tell everybody where they can find you first?
I am available on most social media platforms, either as M3 Writes or MMM Writes. And I'm not on Facebook a lot these days, but I'm on Instagram. That's usually where I'm hanging out.
All right. When is the second book coming out? What are we doing?
I am deep in the editing process.
Nice.
So yeah, my publisher and I are working on the editing for the second book, and I'm very hopeful that it's going to come out later this year because yeah, it's been a long time coming, and it needs to happen because it's great. I love it. I'm excited about it.
Like I said before, I think the last time you were on, I said, you're going to come on one day and it's going to be out, and it's just going to trip me up because we've been talking about it for so long. But
well, she'll move faster through the editing process now because she's excited to get on this this unicorn story.
Yeah, right.
Yes. The problem is I always have so many ideas, and this is what I keep saying. Someone was like, "Oh, you need to make that a trilogy," and I'm like, "I'm only halfway through a quadrilogy, and it's taken me like 5 years to get through this film." So like, don't like I'm telling my brain, don't distract me. I don't need more. But yes, no, this unicorn thing is great, and I gotta like jump on it. But that means I gotta finish this. I gotta finish Altered Rise.
Thank you, Jeff, for watching.
Hey, speaking of awesome cover artist, Jeffrey Hayes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, great show.
That's his some of his work here.
Nice, awesome. Show it off again real quick.
The couple of his covers here.
Yeah, the In the Wind one is fantastic. I love that cover. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. All right, guys. Well, I'm Joe Compton. This is Go Indie Now. If you don't know where you are here. So congratulations, you found us. I'm real excited that you did. While you're here, you can smash the like button. You can comment. You can subscribe. You can share. I mean, it's really great when you share. Sharing is caring, everybody. And I think that's really important. So, it's awesome that you would do that. And I really do appreciate it. And I love each and every one of you for doing so. And thank you for being here. And thank you for watching. Because you know what? It's always time to go indie now. And with that, we say goodbye.